What's up, everybody? This is Trey Biddy with HawgSports, HawgSports.com. A lot to talk about on today's show of HawgSports Live. Razorback football, basketball, baseball. We're going to spend a lot of time, though, talking about transfer portal, Razorback football roster, and we're going to get into a lot of that with Danny West. All that and more on today's episode of HawgSports Live. Before we get started, I want to remind you there's plenty of ways to watch and listen. You can always tune in on Facebook Live. Be sure to follow the page if you haven't done so already, along with 90,000 other Razorback fans. Also available on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe to the channel. Hit the notifications bell so you're alerted anytime we upload new videos on YouTube. Also available on Apple Podcasts. Throw us that 5-star review if you haven't done so already. Let others know what to expect, what they can expect to see with HawgSports Live. And HawgSports is just $1 right now for your first month at HawgSports.com. Plenty to get to today. It's been a busy weekend for sure. We'll start off real quick with Arkansas baseball. We'll just get a few housekeeping things out of the way. But Arkansas won the series against South Carolina 2-1, 4-1 on Friday. I was at that game. 3-1 on Saturday, 5-1 on Sunday. Big series win for the Hogs. Next up, at Vanderbilt, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. That's at 6, 7, and 2 o'clock on Saturday, and that will wrap up the series, the regular season. And Arkansas begins SEC tournament play. That's Tuesday in Hoover when SEC tournament play begins. Arkansas currently ranked number 2 nationally by Baseball America, number 2 nationally by D1 Baseball, and leads the SEC West with a 19-8 conference record, and that's good enough for first overall also. One game, let's see, nope, a game and a half ahead of LSU. So that's where things stand with baseball. Surging right now, just like Razorback recruiting, just like the transfer portal. And we're going to go ahead and jump in with Danny West a little earlier than we normally do, just because there's so much to talk about with this. If those of you who don't follow Danny, you can follow him at Danny West 24/7 on Twitter. He's the HawgSports recruiting analyst for, I can't even remember now. It's been many, many years Danny's been with us. So most of it, Danny's content is VIP. So if you want to read his recruiting breakdowns and up-to-date information, then you want a VIP subscription. Danny, how you doing, man?
I'm doing great. I'm a little bit under the weather, but still rocking and rolling. How are you?
What's going on, man?
Man, sinus infection. So I woke up yesterday sounding like Scottie Pippen. LeBron James is the best player.
Okay, here we go. Don't derail the show now.
Yeah.
So, no, Danny,
man, I've been busy. I don't know what you wanted to ask me, but it just seems like day 900, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So we've kind of reached that point, but what a weekend for Arkansas, man. I'm sure you want to get into some of these commitments. Got another visitor on campus today, so a lot to talk about. Where do you want to start?
Well, let's talk about the visitor on campus today before we get to what just happened.
Sure. Chris Rhodes, Butler County Community College in Kansas. He's a cornerback, 2021 graduate of Truman High School. That's Independence, Missouri. He came out, he signed with South Dakota State, ended up at Butler where he's already got his associate degree, and he can leave anytime. Now, Chris had planned on staying through the season. He wanted a full season of film under his belt. He had planned on staying and, trying to land some more offers and getting out of there in December. But, man, it looks like Arkansas, Missouri, Kansas State, quite a few teams showing interest right now, and he's in Fayetteville as we speak for an unofficial. So I get the feeling talking to Chris, I don't want to speak for him, but it sounds to me like, Trey, if they want him, I could see it moving rather quickly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Arkansas may be in need of a corner with the Quincy McAdoo situation following his accident, and we'll see what his status is. But Arkansas definitely needs defensive backs, and we'll talk about that a little bit. But first, I guess we'll just kind of go chronologically. But Francis Sherman, tight end out of Louisville, a former walk-on at Louisville, who was put on scholarship, I guess a couple of years ago. But he's one of Arkansas's latest additions. What do you know about Francis Sherman?
He is. Not a whole lot more than you. I've only known him for about a week, I guess. But It seemed to me, talking to people and reading everything over there, that he was used primarily as a blocker for Louisville. Had some pretty good guys in front of him. So, Arkansas, man, I said it when they got Var'Keyes Gums. I said they needed a good one, and they got a good one. And this is no shot at Francis at all. Seems like a good dude based on my brief exchanges with him. But I think they needed a guy. You need some depth, need a body, and I don't think anybody expects him to come in and be Travis Kelce or Brock Bowers, whoever you want to say there, but definitely helps you in the blocking department. I think he's a physical guy, could probably stand another 15, 20 pounds and get that done over the summer. So needed some more depth there, it felt like, and it looks like they got it with an experienced guy. He's got a couple of years left, so that's a benefit to you. So, it just seems like based on where the portal's at, where all the names are at, there's just not a ton of action left, and it seemed like it made a lot of sense for him.
Danny West joining us again. You can follow him at Danny West 24/7. That's why the Var'Keyes Gums decommitment, and eventually, obviously, he recommitted, kind of stung because there just wasn't a lot of great names out there in the portal. Yeah. But Var'Keyes Gums is a guy that you would expect to maybe be. I'm not nobody you want to put Brock Bowers on anybody, but a guy that can really produce for him and really play a lot. But people don't understand sometimes that, first of all, you have injuries, so you want to make sure that you have quality depth, but also you got to get through practices. And if they're going to run 12 personnel, you need to be lining up quality tight ends out there, first, second, third team. And with 12 personnel, obviously that's 2 tight ends, so you're going, you need a solid 6 deep of preferably scholarship players, and Arkansas just a little bit thin in that area when it comes to scholarship players. Now, they got some really good freshmen coming in, but this guy, Francis Sherman, a guy that can block for you and didn't catch a whole lot of passes. Var'Keyes Gums obviously been in the college weight room a couple of years. He can block. That's the only thing you worry about with the freshmen a little bit is just, when it comes to point of attack and going up against a defensive end or a linebacker, how well are they going to do?
Grown man league.
Yeah, and speaking of grown men, is it Keevy? Is that how you say it? Keevy Rose?
Yeah.
Louisiana Tech defensive tackle. Is that Conference USA? All Conference USA first team selection? Is that right?
Mercy. I believe so.
Yeah. So that's 6'3", 303 pounds. I mean, this to me is as deep as Arkansas has been on the defensive line now because of the work they've done in the transfer portal. Last year getting Landon Jackson, this year getting Tank Booker, Keevy Rose, also getting Trajan Jeffcoat, John Morgan. I mean, without those guys, it's kind of scary up front on the defensive line. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that when we look at the recruiting that Arkansas has done in the past and why they're in the situation they are now. But, I mean, this is extraordinarily deep on the defensive line all of a sudden.
Yeah, and buddy, I like this one quite a bit. I talked to you a couple of weeks ago, and I said if I had to list a top 5 incoming transfers, Var'Keyes Gums would be in it. Well, shoot, I think this one would too. I mean, you think about beating Texas Christian, TCU, and Miami for this guy. I mean, it's kind of slim pickings once you reach this late stage of the portal action. I get that, but I know for a fact how badly Miami wanted this one. Like, they really, really wanted him and needed him based on everything I was hearing down there. So, man, what a big get. It just felt like a huge as soon as his name hit the portal and Arkansas was the first offer announced by him on Twitter and Ole Miss was 1 minute later, I said, "Ooh, this one's going to be interesting to watch." Anytime you're the first one on the table, kid from Henderson, Texas, not that far away. He's somewhat locally in the region in Ruston, Louisiana. It just made a lot of sense based on Arkansas's needs and another experienced guy. He's been around the block some. I always enjoy when these guys come in for visits and stuff. You can just tell, I guess it's natural. You get into college, you start growing. He looks like a grown man. Seems like they only look for grown men on the defensive line as far as transfers, and he fits the bill. So I'm with you on the depth. That's kind of been the theme, has it not, ever since last year? I think Arkansas learned a hard lesson, not that they didn't know it already, but I think fans more than anything realized how important depth is in the SEC. And, man, it seems like that's kind of been a theme for them to just go out and get as many quality players as they can at positions of need. And this was another one, man. He's big time pickup right there. Now, that's not to say Francis Sherman and Brathwaite and all these guys aren't big guys, big gets, but this one definitely was. I know Arkansas was super excited about this one.
Yeah, I mean, in this day and age of college football, you can build great depth. And that's why I've been saying, like, on the defensive line, they need to go out and get another defensive lineman. Not that they were in trouble there. It's just that they have an opportunity to really build some depth and create a genuine 5-6 man rotation on the interior where they can go into the fourth quarter and put their best guys out there and be healthy and fresh. And Arkansas, that's, to me, on defense, that is what has separated them from the upper tier teams in the SEC. You may start off strong. I mean, Arkansas played Cincinnati pretty well on defense last year, and then the defense just got worse and worse as they got more injured because they didn't have the depth. You can build that depth now through the transfer portal. So, Danny, I want to take you now to, you mentioned him just a little bit, A.J. Brathwaite. This guy, this was funny because he committed, and people on our message board were like, well, I'll wait for Danny to say something because, I think it's weird he hadn't said something. But I know that this guy, he caught you when you were in the shower. You got to shower and you got to eat sometimes. But I'm pretty sure you probably wrote this story while you were had a towel wrapped around you in front of your computer, soaking wet.
Here's a little inside scoop for you. No towel. No towel at all.
Oh,
standing
no.
at the bathroom sink with a computer. I'll let everybody's imagination take it where they need to. But yeah, that's a first. I've done it on deer stands and bass boats, but that was the first buck naked one right there.
All right, TMI. But this guy was he's not just a headliner transfer. He's Western Kentucky, had 98 career tackles, played in a ton of games for them, was banged up a little bit last year. But they needed safeties, and this is another guy that can provide some definite experience for him. It was formerly committed to Florida International, I believe.
Yeah, brief commitment there. You almost kind of feel bad for FIU. They had a pretty good one that they felt good about, and lo and behold, Arkansas makes a really quick move there to get him on campus, and you could kind of see the writing on the wall. Once he hit campus, it was I felt like it was pretty much a lock. So 6 foot, 195 safety. Again, the depth, man. We keep talking about depth, but that position there probably needed it as much or more than any other. And seems like they've picked up a couple good ones. If you can close this thing out, they got 3 spots left.
Yeah, I got them at 82 total.
Yeah, you almost hate to not sign 2 more, but I guess 1 more if that's a corner. Maybe it gives you some flexibility. You can move a guy. Obviously, the Quincy stuff you touched on there, just status unknown, and just wish him the best. Hope he gets healthy first and foremost. But experienced guy, grad transfer, fired up about it. Miami, Florida Central, graduate from 2018. So he's been out of high school for a while now. That may not seem like that long ago, but that's another grown man.
He's an adult. Yep.
Yeah. And who knows, man? A lot of times it seems like the guys you least expect in the transfer portal just kind of rise to the top. Maybe this guy shows up and takes a starting spot and runs with it. But I like that duo now of Snacks Johnson and Walcott that they started off with. And when you add a Singletary and Brathwaite now, I like that group pretty good.
Yeah, absolutely. And they're at 82 scholarship players now. And when I was looking at what they need, like defensive tackle, Keevy Rose, that'd be nice. Another linebacker, they got him, Jaheim Thomas. Looking at offensive line moving forward, they could use one. They could really use 2 offensive line, but at least one. Wide receiver, they need another wide receiver. But the thing with wide receivers, you got 7 scholarship players, and every single one of them are fighting legitimately for a starting spot. Offensive line, I think you're in pretty good shape. I don't see a guy out there that I look at and go like, this guy can come in and challenge one of these guys for a starting spot. I don't see that out there, but they needed it for depth. The thing with safety is it's not like a depth issue. It's not like they need some guys to help them get through practice to improve the overall quality. They needed somebody to come in and push, and not only push, but just take a starting spot. Like that's where they were at safety, and still would like to see them get one more even though with these remaining 3 spots, you could say another offensive lineman, another wide receiver, and definitely a safety. I think that's what you look at with those 3. And, if they don't find a guy that's of quality at all those spots, then obviously, there's some walk-ons, offensive linemen walk-ons who, are pretty good players. Tommy Var'Keyes, the transfer from Maryland, Josh Street, Brooks Edmondson, maybe those guys are people that you look at to give one of those scholarships to. But obviously, I think you need one more defensive back in this class.
I do too. And it seems like forever they've had 15 scholarships to give. And when you kind of get down to 2, 3, you're like, oh, man, you still got a few spots here left to fill, and you try to prioritize what's most important, I guess. I mean, shoot, some people want a punter right now. If there's one to be had, we'll see what Max Fletcher offers this year. But, I'm with you on that. I know the young man on campus today, Rhodes, is an actual corner. So, that makes it interesting to see if maybe they move a guy from corner to safety or how they navigate that. But he is a corner, 6 foot, 185. But, a lot of opportunities there down the final stretch. But I'm with you on offensive line. I'm just not sure where they turn. I think wide receiver, there's so many options right now. And in my opinion, they're all kind of marginal. I don't see a huge difference between a ton of guys out there. So wouldn't surprise me if it's a guy that we haven't even talked about yet. And it feels like I've talked about 30 receivers over the last few weeks.
Yeah.
But, I just can't sit here and make promises that Arkansas is going to go out and make a splash, big name type at offensive line or receiver. Could be a guy you've never heard of. But
well, even the Muskrat deal, Dan. Like Muskrat looked like he was just eventually going to commit to Arkansas, offensive lineman out of Tulsa. Looked like he was going to commit to Arkansas. He ends up going to Auburn, but he wasn't a guy that I was looking at going like, this guy's going to come and bounce out Josh Braun or Brady Latham or Bo Limmer. He's a 6'3" interior offensive lineman. I played tackle at Tulsa, but I wasn't looking at him. He's not going to play tackle at Arkansas or Auburn. But I wasn't looking at him like this is a guy that, was going to come in and challenge. It was a guy that was going to come in and provide some depth, but a lot of people were kind of upset about that. All right, Danny, I want to fast forward you a little bit. Wyatt Simmons, the hottest new name in recruiting in the state of Arkansas. This guy didn't have a Twitter account. His dad's the head coach at Harding. He plays at Harding Academy. His dad's the head coach at Harding University. 6'3", 215-pound linebacker, just put his huddle tape out. A lot of coaches have come and visited him during the evaluation period, and you fast forward and, Arkansas offered last week. Auburn is offered. Florida State is offered. Arkansas State, Mississippi State, just a surge. Oklahoma offered. Just a surge of recruiting attention suddenly for a guy that, wasn't going to camps and wasn't putting his stuff out there on Huddle and stuff, and just I don't know if he just decided to, or I don't know why he got such a late start, but people have taken notice. You turn on this kid's highlight video, I mean, the name that comes to mind is Drew Sanders.
Easy now.
I know, easy. I just say it's just a high school comparison. That's all.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. Hey, you actually you kind of got tipped off on this guy first, so appreciate that. But hey. To go from unknown to an 87 grade, and with all these offers, I don't think I've ever seen anything like it. We've done this for a while, and we've seen guys take off typically around January, February. You'll see an unknown in-state guy just kind of come out of nowhere, but you never see first of all, you don't see many guys who release their film in May. I think that's where it starts. And obviously, we're not naive enough to think that his father being a head coach at that level doesn't in some way benefit him. I'm sure it does, right? Coach's word seems to travel fast and stuff like that. But, man, I think he's legit. As soon as I saw his tape, I was like, all right, he's probably going to come to camp and have a legit shot here at an offer, or at least at the least PWO type, right? Preferred walk-on.
Right.
So I felt pretty good about him. And then lo and behold, here comes Auburn, FSU, Oklahoma. I was like, oh, well, that does it. Arkansas, there is not going to be a wait till camp type situation here. Once all those come, it kind of, I'm not going to say forces your hand, but definitely expedites your evaluation process.
Yeah.
I'll put it that way.
And he's an 87 overall, and that's important to note also his recruiting ranking that, Gabe Brooks, who's in charge of, evaluating in this area, he's not going to stamp a guy a 4-star prospect without seeing him in person. It's just not the way Gabe operates. He likes to see verified track times, whether that's a 40 at a camp or, running high school track meets. He wants to see verified times, puts a lot of stock in track times, and also wants to see him in person. But based on his film, he feels confident enough to say this guy is at least an 87 overall. Basically, that's where that comes from. And once he gets a chance to see him in person, I think he'll determine what this guy's actually rated.
Gabe Brooks, I will say this, one of the best I've ever worked with, man. That's probably, if I had to rank my favorite things about working for 24/7 Sports, is that the evaluation process that they do is so thorough, like you just talked about there. It's not a joke. They don't take it lightly, and I appreciate that, because if I'm just a casual consumer, observer of all of this, I want to know that people behind the scenes are actually doing their best shot,
Yep.
And I know Gabe Brooks does. So he's probably one of the most thorough guys I've ever seen. I appreciate that.
He is. All right, Danny, anything else to add?
No, man. No, I could talk to you all day. I wish we had more time.
Yeah. All right, brother. Appreciate you.
All right, man. See you.
All right, everybody. That's Danny West. Again, at Danny West 24/7 on Twitter. If you want to follow him and if you want to read his content, again, most of it is VIP. That's just a snippet of some of the things that Danny brings to the table with his coverage at HawgSports. It's just $1 for your first month, HawgSports.com, or you can try the year for 30% off. The NBA Draft Combine starts today, May 15th through 21st from Wintrust Arena in Chicago, Illinois. Anthony Black, Nick Smith Jr., Jordan Walsh, and Ricky Council IV, all participating from Arkansas. A lot of Arkansas flavor this year in the NBA draft. Devo Davis was recently on air with John Neighbors on 103.7 The Buzz, a surprise call-in interview. He talked about his decision timeline. You can read that article on HawgSports. But, he's not invited to the Combine, but he's able to meet with teams and all that kind of stuff. Arkansas is currently at, I think, 13 if those guys return. Obviously, we're still waiting on Ron Holland, see what he decides. My sources say Arkansas feels really good about their situation right now. Texas has not released him from his scholarship. The other option for him seems like G League Ignite, which those who aren't familiar with G League Ignite, it's one of the G League teams that's just mainly dedicated to bringing in, guys who aren't NBA draft eligible, guys that are coming, first year out of high school. They have veterans on the team. Like the whole thing is like to mentor these and develop these young guys. Basically, is what G League Ignite does. But that would be his other option, or going back to Texas, I guess. But still hasn't been released from his letter of intent from Texas. I want to change gears a little bit. Talk about Arkansas's football roster coming up in 2023, because this, at least in the modern era of college football, 85 scholarship era, which that happened in 95, something like that, 94, mid-90s. Since that era has been in play, this is the most veteran Arkansas football team in modern era. They have 25 seniors on the roster in 4 different categories, actually. 25 seniors. This just edges out the 2021 group, which was loaded with super seniors from the forgiven eligibility year of 2020. So you had a lot of guys like, Grant Morgan, for example, Hayden Henry, a bunch of guys decided to come back and play on that team, which won 9 games. A lot of times that's a good indicator that you're going to have success when you have a team with a lot of seniors. But that year they had 19 seniors. Last year they had it wasn't very many at all. I want to say fewer than 10. This year, thanks in large to the transfer portal, 25 seniors on the roster in 4 different categories. You have redshirt super seniors. So super senior would be a guy that's in a red shirt. He's playing in his 6th year of eligibility. You got 6 of them. And that means they have just this 1 year remaining. Cade Fortin, John Morgan, Trajan Jeffcoat, Antonio Greer, Ladarius Bishop, A.J. Brathwaite. Bishop, and these are scholarship seniors also. Bishop could possibly petition for a 7th year because he only played in 2 games last year because of injury. So he's actually got a medical redshirt year available, likely. The next category would be super seniors. These guys have 1 year remaining unless they were to redshirt this year because they never redshirted. That's Zach Williams and Al Walcott. Redshirt seniors, there are 11 redshirt seniors. They have 2 years remaining this coming year and another year if they wanted to take a super senior year. So they'd be redshirt super seniors in 2024. That's KJ Jefferson, Tyrone Broden, Nathan Bax, Bo Limmer, Brady Latham, Eric Gregory, Tarian Carter, Marcus Miller, Kiwi Rose, Hudson Clark, and Malik Chavis. True seniors. There's 6 true seniors with 2 years remaining if they were to redshirt this year. 1 year remaining if they don't. Is that right? True seniors? Yeah. True seniors, they got this year. And no, they got 2 years remaining. If they redshirted this year, then they'd have 3 years. So that's Dominic Johnson, Isaac Teslaw, Francis Sherman, Takias Crawford, Jashad Stewart, and Dwight McLaughlin. So 4 categories of seniors, 25 total seniors. That is, at least to my knowledge, a record in the modern era of college football. Never seen that many scholarship seniors. Transfer portal's been very good to Arkansas. I mean, you look at where Arkansas would be right now if they didn't have the transfer portal. Okay, the 2019 class was very good. That was Chad Morris's one great contribution to this program. Maybe his only. The 2019 class. There are still players on this roster from 2019. You had a lot of guys contribute out of that class, a lot of studs. But the problem is the 2020 class, when Sam Pittman got to Arkansas, it's the quick turnaround. You know, the early signing period obviously was picking up more and more steam. So you had most of the best players in the country signed early. Pittman wasn't coming as a head coach from another program and stuff like that. So it's not like just like bringing over a bunch of guys that you recruited previously like that. You're not going to just like not go to Georgia, when you were committed and follow Sam Pittman. That's not, usually when you hire a coach who is a head coach somewhere else, he's at a program, usually a lesser program, and, it seems natural to bring some players up. So the 2020 recruiting class, anybody want to take a quick stab at how many players are left on the team from the class of 2020? You can pause the video if you want to really think about it. Answer coming, 2. 2 players from the class of 2020 currently on the Arkansas football roster, the scholarship players. That's Jashad Stewart and Dominic Johnson. These are guys that would be seniors and redshirt juniors, veteran players on your football team. There are 2 left. Without the transfer portal, Arkansas would be in trouble because of this class, the lack of success with this class. That's pretty wild. 2021 was better, but it wasn't like a lot better. So Arkansas has added 17 transfers, and they just had a lot to make up for. You look at 2021, I think there may be like 8 players left from that class. 2021, you come from the 2020 year where you have a quick turnaround. You hire Sam Pittman in December. National Signing Day is December. He's got like a couple of weeks to get out the road and put together a class, and then the rest of the class is put together, from the guys that didn't sign, which isn't a whole lot, in February. And then COVID strikes. And so recruiting is about relationships. And for a new coaching staff, this is why it's different than a staff that's been, at a program for a certain year and why it affected Arkansas differently. For a new coaching staff, they haven't had those guys come in as sophomores and juniors and come in and visit them, build relationships over a long period of time, have them come in for camps in the past, get really good evaluations. So you're not able to do in-person evaluations. You're not able to host them on official visits. Everything's done over a computer, and you make some really bad evaluations. That's one reason we have seen such a mass exodus from Arkansas into the transfer portal from the class of 2020 and class of 2021. Mass exoduses from those classes. Luckily, the transfer portal is there to help Arkansas. I mean, it's been as big as anything for Arkansas. I mean, right now, like we're heading into year 4 with Sam Pittman, and there wouldn't be a lot of people right now just thinking, well, 2020 was tough because of that. 2021 was tough. They're not going to care about that. They're going to care about where you are in year 4, your money year. And without the transfer portal, this team, I'm sorry, they would be sunk right now. They would be sunk. 2020 was not a great year to bring in a new coach. It just wasn't, because of everything that happened right after that with the transfer portal, with COVID-19 and the restrictions that were placed on them for that. So, where we want to go next? Another good indicator for Arkansas is Arkansas players on a roster. Like having a high number of seniors, that's usually a good indicator that your team's going to be successful. Another is having stars from Arkansas, the state of Arkansas, natural state products. Who are the natural state products on this team that are like going to start for you? Quincy McAdoo, who, we don't know what's going to happen with Quincy. We wish him all the best, his own personal safety and health first. Ladarius Bishop. Ladarius started 7 games in 2021. Jashad Stewart. Jashad's been a key player, mostly as a backup for Arkansas. He hasn't been a starter. Who else? Zach Williams. Zach Williams kind of been the same way, kind of been, mostly a backup. So Malik Chavis, same deal, kind of been a backup. So who are the stars from Arkansas? Just not a lot, guys. I mean, not a lot from inside the state, and it's not like the recruiting has been profoundly different. It's not like there's a lot of Arkansas kids that are starring at other Power 5 programs around the country. There's not any. There's not any stars playing at some other school in the SEC that's from Arkansas or somewhere else. Last couple seasons you haven't had a whole lot either. Isaiah Nichols, Simeon Blair, Luke Jones. You go back to 2021. Now, this is where you find some, some proof that your solid classes, your solid teams had really strong representation from the state of Arkansas. 2021, you had a 9-4 record. You had Traylon Burks from Warren, Grant Morgan from Greenwood, Monteric Brown from Ashdown. And then you had other guys. Like, those are your stars right there. Like Traylon Burks, leader on offense. Grant Morgan, leader on defense. Monteric Brown, leader on defense. Those guys, Burks and Brown, were drafted. Grant Morgan was a first-team All-SEC linebacker. You had Tyson Morris, who was the second leading receiver that year. Blake Kern, Tyson Morris from Fayetteville. Blake Kern from Lamar. Ty Clary from Fayetteville. Markel Utsey, who was from Little Rock, was a Missouri transfer from Little Rock. Hayden Henry from Little Rock. Ladarius Bishop. Simeon Blair. That's 10 starters from Arkansas on that team, on that 2021 squad. And nobody off last season's 7-5 team played in the NFL out of Arkansas. Got drafted. Brett Bielema's best team, 2015, 8-5. That team should have won 10 games. But they finished 8-5. You had Brandon Allen at quarterback, Fayetteville, Drew Morgan from Greenwood, Dominic Reed from Camden, Hunter Henry from Little Rock, Jeremy Sprinkle from Whitehall, Mitch Smothers from Springdale, Brooks Ellis from Fayetteville, Josh Liddell from Pine Bluff, Kevin Richards from Jacksonville. I mean, those are all big-time contributors from the state of Arkansas. A lot of those guys in the NFL. Brandon Allen's still in the NFL right now. Hunter Henry's still in the NFL. Jeremy Sprinkle's still in the NFL. I mean, that's a really well-represented Arkansas team. You look at Bobby Petrino's best teams. You look at the 2010, 2011 teams. Those teams went 10-3 and 11-2 respectively. Now, I'm just kind of combining those two, but I mean, listen to the Arkansas names. Ryan Mallett, who's originally from Batesville, Tyler Wilson from Greenwood, Joe Adams from Little Rock, Jarius Wright from Warren, Greg Childs from Warren, DJ Williams from Little Rock, Ben Cleveland from Springdale, Chris Gregg from Warren, Van Stuman from North Little Rock, Dennis Johnson from Texarkana, Broderick Green from Little Rock via transfer from USC, Wade Grayson from Harrison, Zach Hawker from Russellville. All those guys on that team. You also had those guys. That's just offense. Defense, you had Jerry Franklin from Marion, Freddie Burton from Morrilton, Jake Beckett from Little Rock, Zach Stather of North Little Rock, Darius Winston from Helena, Byron Jones from Junction City. Mallett, Wilson, Adams, Wright, Childs, Williams, Gragg, Hawker, and Beckett were all drafted or made it to the NFL. Well, all of them were drafted. You go back to Houston Nutt's teams, 2006, 2007, again combining these two teams. Houston Nutt, a Little Rock native, by the way, went 10-4 and 8-5 on those two teams. You had Mitch Mustaine at quarterback. I know things didn't work out, obviously, but he started 8 games for him. Darren McFadden, Little Rock, Peyton Hillis, Conway, Marcus Monk, Lepanto, Damian Williams, Springdale, Jonathan Luigs, Little Rock, Mitch Petrus, Carlisle, late Mitch Petrus, Nate Garner, Little Rock, Antoine Robinson, Little Rock, Keith Jackson Jr., Little Rock, Cord Gray, Wynn, Weston Dacus, Searcy, Freddie Fairchild, Little Rock. I mean, McFadden was a superstar, obviously. Hillis was a really great player for him, had a 1,000-yard season in the NFL. Luigs, Petrus, Garner, Jackson, Dacus all played in the NFL. Williams transferred out. Damian Williams transferred out to USC, but has also made it to the NFL. You look back at Houston Nutt's 2002-2003 teams. Matt Jones, Van Buren, Fort Smith, Northside. Cedric Cobbs, Little Rock. Dearius Howard, West Memphis. Sean Andrews, Camden. Marcus Harrison, Little Rock. Jeb Huckabee. Searcy. Is that Huckabee or Huckabee? I forgot which one we just – Jeb Huckabee, I think. Searcy. Hillis and Monk were also contributors on that 2004 team. Keith Jackson Jr., Little Rock, Elliott Harris, Mariana, Clark Moore, Van Buren, also members of those teams. Jones, Cobbs, Andrews, Harrison, Huckabee, Jackson all made it to the NFL. So this year's different because there's not a lot of in-state flavor, and I think a lot of that is just a natural result of the transfer portal where things have shifted, where you can go out and just get veteran teams. But, also the state just hasn't produced a lot of superstars lately. And, again, it's not like you've got guys from Arkansas that are just starring from other teams. Danny had an interesting article recently about guys who signed Power 5, out of the state of Arkansas. 75% of them are offered by Arkansas. Arkansas hits at a tremendous clip for signing the number of guys, inside the state that they offer. A lot of people see, one player leaves and it's just, it's a disaster. But like when you compare it to other states around the country, Arkansas hits at a really high clip for the guys that they offer inside the state. There just hadn't been a lot of superstars, not a lot of stars. Like there's no running backs on the roster from Arkansas. It seems like there's always a running back. Last year you had James Joyner who ended up transferring out and didn't play, but there seems like there's always an Arkansas running back or something. Arkansas quarterback. Now there's a wave of quarterbacks coming. Obviously, the latest Walker White's committed to Auburn, but there's guys after him that are from Arkansas that are Power 5 Arkansas guys that Arkansas has offered and stuff. So just think that's real interesting. Some good signs for Arkansas program have been a lot of seniors, which they have, and a lot of players from the state of Arkansas, which they do not have. Arkansas has to do a better job recruiting defensive players also. I've got a really in-depth breakdown about that. Just talking about offensive guys, like Arkansas has had 40 offensive players drafted since joining the SEC. They've just had 8 fewer defensive players. But the defensive guys, like there's not any guys that go undrafted on defense that make NFL rosters. That hasn't happened. George Wilson played wide receiver at Arkansas, ended up playing safety in the NFL for a number of years. The only guy that I can think of that went undrafted that made an NFL roster is Jerry Jacobs. Jerry Jacobs played on that 2021 team, or is it 2022? 2020. I think it was 2021 team. And, he played 4 games. I think lost his starting job and kind of quit in a huff. So he didn't really play at Arkansas that long. Was at Arkansas State before that. But that's the only guy I can think of who went undrafted and made an NFL roster. When you think about Arkansas offensive players that made NFL rosters, went undrafted, Alvin Bailey, Denver Kirkland, Dan Skipper, Felipe Franks, Javonte Herndon, Keon Hatcher, Cody Hollister, all those guys, played games in the NFL. Hollister's still in the NFL, didn't really do a whole lot at Arkansas. But so you had a lot, and I also think that, like, on offense, you can create a system that has success even if you don't have a ton of NFL draft picks, because if you look at the history, let's see. Arkansas's offense has only been in the bottom 4 in yardage and points 3 times in the last 11 years since the SEC expanded to 14 teams. The defense has been there 7 times, and the difference is not that much when you consider offensive players drafted and defensive players drafted. But there's an absolute correlation when you look at teams that had a high number of defensive draft picks. Those teams had really, really good teams. I've broken it down, every coach, the number of players he coached that went on to the NFL, the number of players that he recruited that eventually maybe they played for other coaches that went on to the NFL. I broke all this stuff down. It's a long, in-depth article. It's called Arkansas Defense Must Produce More NFL Draft Picks. Punting. Punting is another problem for Arkansas. It especially was last year. You go back and look, Arkansas had 4 close games that they played, right? Texas A&M 23, Arkansas 21. There were punting problems in that game. Now, there were other problems, obviously. There was the blunder at the goal line where K.J. Jefferson tried to jump 12 feet into the end zone, 99-yard touchdown the other way. There was the errant snap. Arkansas was marching. They got 2nd and 5 with 1:30 to play, and Stromberg has an errant snap, and then suddenly it's like 3rd and 16, 3rd and 14, I think. So that obviously killed the drive. There's a lot of things, but there were also plenty of other issues in that. 29-yard punt to the Texas A&M 39-yard line. It's not too much to ask for a 45-yard punt, pin them down, somewhere in the 20s, 24-yard line or so. And that one ended up in a 31-yard chip shot. Remember, they won by 2 points. There was, I think another couple. There's another couple of punts. There's a 25-yarder in the opening drive in that game. 25-yard punt to the Texas A&M 35-yard line. Again, 45-yard kick puts it at the 15. That's not unreasonable to ask. It's not unreasonable to ask for a punt to land at the 10-yard line. Obviously it's great to land at the 2 or the 1, but there's a pretty big difference between, checking up, a punt at the 10-yard line versus it going out of the back of the end zone on a 52-yard boot. And that happened a lot last year. So those aren't like dramatic instances, but like 25-yard punt and a 29-yard punt in a game where the score is defined, so closely, those are problems. Liberty 21, Arkansas 19. What happened in that Liberty game? Blocked punt. This is not – I've heard several I don't know where like the statistics are on this, but I've heard several coaches. John L. Smith used to say it all the time. The special teams coach for Alabama said this also. But when you have a punt blocked, from momentum, field position, all that stuff, it is the biggest momentum swing in college football. Your chances of winning a game, the moment Arkansas had that punt block, their percentage chances of winning that game went down to 10%. And this was something that happened, I believe, in the first quarter of the game. You had 45, 43, 44, 55, and 50-yard punts on that day from Reed Bauer. Now, there were other issues. K.J. Jefferson shouldn't have played in that game. But, you get a blocked punt. And that directly resulted in them scoring the first touchdown of the game. Huge momentum swing. Arkansas lost that game 21-19. Can't have blocked punts. LSU 13, Arkansas 10. Arkansas had multiple opportunities to pin Tigers deep. They had punts of 32 yards to the LSU 20, 29 yards to the LSU 28. I mean, these are opportunities to pin them deep. Bauer had a 52-yarder. I talked about that a minute ago that went too far, went well into the end zone. I mean, you gotta have better results than that. Missouri 29, Arkansas 27. I mean, Jefferson was sacked 7 times in that game, threw an interception. A lot of problems. Only 113 rushing yards on 38 carries. Plenty of issues. Blocked punt. He had a block punt, partially blocked punt that went just 20 yards to the 35-yard line. When that happened, this is 6:26 to play in the game, and when that happened, Arkansas's chances of winning went down 10%. Arkansas lost 29-27. Got to be better at punting. People talk like the thing that's frustrating about it is you spend so much time trying to exploit the matchups that are in your favor, trying to mitigate the matchups that aren't in your favor. So much time working offense and defense, and punting and punt protection is the easiest. It's not simple. It's not easy, but it's the out of everything. This is the easiest thing to get right, aside from calling for a fair catch, which you should always do on kickoffs. You should always call for a fair catch. I've got a breakdown on that too, and just like looking at the scope of college football, how important it is to just call for a fair catch. However, aside from that, the easiest thing to get right, again, not easy per se, but easy in relation to everything else that you have to do in college football, is to get off a decent punt and protect the punter. And if you can't do that, then everything else just kind of goes to hell. Like every single one of these close losses, there are serious punting issues, whether it's shank, a pull that goes 20-something yards, or getting a punt blocked, which happened a couple times last year. All right, we talked about the scholarship distribution a little bit. Arkansas is at 82 after the surge over the weekend, adding 3 more out of the transfer portal. They have room for 3 more after this. We've talked about the needs, another safety or a defensive back. Maybe that means shifting some guys around, because we've talked about that with safeties and corners over the years. Safeties have gotten a little bit smaller. Corners have gotten a little bit taller. So it's almost kind of morphed into the same body type. Playing those positions, obviously you'd like your best tacklers playing safety and your best coverage guys playing corner, but maybe it means shifting some guys around. Danny talked about the JUCO defensive back that's here, but Arkansas needs a defensive back, preferably a safety type, but a defensive back, and worry about it after that. They need an offensive lineman to get to 15 total scholarship players. You'd like to be at 16, a 3 deep plus 1. I've explained my formula on that before. And they could use a wide receiver, though you'd like to be at 10 scholarship wide receivers. Again, 3 deep plus 1. So you'd like to be at 10, but at least 9. They have 7 on scholarship right now. So, yeah, you'd like to add another one. But the thing is, they do have some quality walk-on wide receivers, Marlon Crockett, Khalil Geralt, Chris Harris, just to name a few guys, Cameron Bibby. So they have some quality walk-on wide receivers. Of the 7 scholarship wide receivers they have, every single one of them is pushing for a starting job. So that's notable. That's why I don't feel like it's like you got to go out and get this done versus safety where you need a starter to come in. So that's where things are right now with the scholarship distribution. In pretty good shape everywhere suddenly. It's not a bad-looking team, to be honest. The more I look at it, I look at weapons at tight end and wide receiver. I mean, you think about having Isaac TeSlaa, Andrew Armstrong, Tyrone Broden, some combination of those 2 guys on the field in 12 personnel where you'd have 2 wide receivers, but 2 6'4+ wide receivers, 6'4 to 6'7 wide receivers on the field. Var'Keyes Gums, Luke Hasz at tight end. Rocket Sanders, a former wide receiver, turned running back. And, by the way, a quarterback that can take off on you at any time, any moment. I mean, that's a pretty scary group of skill players in quarterback, I think, on offense. Now, you got a couple of new couple of new tackles starting for you, and Patrick Kudus and Devon Manuel, another starter on the offensive line who's new. So all that's going to, play a role. But to me, that looks pretty good, and the depth's pretty good, all the way down. Even on the offensive line, I would say you've got 8 guys you feel pretty good about putting in there. Tackle would be probably the biggest concern. Defensive line looks really solid. I mean, Zach Williams, Rashad Stewart probably playing backup roles. Those guys are really good players. Trajan Jeffcoat, Landon Jackson, John Morgan. You got Quincy Rhodes coming in. Normal year, Quincy Rhodes would be relied to play on 3 years ago. Now he can just kind of sit back, maybe redshirt. I mean, defensive interior now with Keeby Rose, Tank Booker, Eric Gregory, Torian Carter, Marcus Miller, Cam Ball. Come on now. That's not bad. That's not a bad front. Linebacker, they finally have a total number of scholarship players that is ideal. Antonio Greer, Jaheim Thomas, Chris Paul. Jordan Crook and Manny Powell can play now. Those guys, I think you would look at in most years like these guys are going to play a big role. Now, they don't have to be thrown into the fire. They can come along at their own pace, but they're good young players who now you have Antonio Greer, Jaheim Thomas, Chris Paul, Jordan Crook, Manny Powell, Carson Dean, another guy that's really coming on. Linebacker not looking bad at all right now. Cornerback, obviously you'd love to get Quincy McAdoo back. Again, that's a secondary thought right now with his overall health after a pretty serious car accident. Ladarius Bishop coming back after starting 7 games in 2021. Dwight McGlothern coming back, started 13 games last year. Snacks Johnson, I think, started 12 last year for Baylor. Quincy McAdoo started the last 4 last year. Jaheim Singletary, a former 5-star, the highest-rated recruit in the 2023 recruiting class. Jalen Braxton, also playing cornerback. Not bad. Safety is the area where there's maybe a little more concern. I think Al Walcott on it playing nickel for him. I think Hudson Clark will start. And then after that, you're looking at A.J. Brathwaite, Malik Chavis, Jaden Johnson. Would like to see them bring in one more safety there. And they got to get better at punter. Max Fletcher has a leg. I'll give the guy a lot of grace, okay? He's from Australia, okay? He's not from this country. He was a true freshman last year. I know he can kick the ball. I've been out, seriously, clocking his punts with a stopwatch, see how much hang time he gets. The guy can boot the ball. He's just got to get consistent. If he can get consistent punting, then that's going to go a long way for Arkansas. You can't have blocked punts. You can't have shanks. You just need somebody that's consistent. Obviously, we know what they have in Cam Little. Eli Stein comes back, obviously, at deep snapper. 37 offensive players, 42 defensive players, 3 specialists, all on scholarship, 82 total scholarship players, room for 3 more. Last little thing I want to get to, Arkansas, Texas A&M is defined as one of the key matchups in the SEC this season. I think they may have been thinking about Texas A&M a little bit more because it's do or die for Jimbo Fisher. And Arkansas's running back room is ranked as the number 5 in college football, headlined by Rocket Sanders, largely because of Rocket Sanders. They mentioned A.J. Green a little bit, didn't really mention Rashad DeBinion, who is right there with A.J. Green. I mean, those guys both had a really good Liberty Bowl showing. Quality backups. You get Isaiah Augustave coming in. Hopefully Dominic Johnson gets healthy. But Rocket Sanders obviously ran for 1,443 yards last year, and he's a big reason Arkansas is ranked as a number 5 backfield in college football. This according to Brad Crawford, 24/7 Sports National College Football writer. Okay. We didn't have time to get to questions, but we certainly probably answered a lot of those guys, a lot of those questions. I want to remind you guys one more time, HawgSports is just $1 for your first month at HAWGsports.com. Sign up. I mean, I get it. If you're just a casual fan and you just want to see passing headlines here and there, do enjoy our free content. We put out a lot of free content as well. But for the diehard fan out there, if you're not subscribed to HawgSports, I'm not sure you could consider yourself diehard. I mean, this is where the information is, the inside information, football, basketball, baseball, recruiting, transfer portal. This is where you get the inside. Where the hell is Keith Grayson? I need to get Keith on again. But this is where the inside information is at HawgSports. And if you don't believe me, just come and try us out for $1. $1 for your first month. And that's how we get you. That's how we get you addicted. All right, everybody. I appreciate you joining me. Thanks to Danny West for hopping on with us, providing some recruiting insight. And thanks to all of you for enjoying the show. Please throw us that 5-star review right now. If you haven't on Apple Podcasts, just take a minute. Even if you're watching on YouTube or Facebook, open your Apple Podcast app and throw us a 5-star review. And I think we're up to 898. Love to get to 1,000 reviews before football season starts. All right, everybody. Thanks for joining me. This has been Trey Biddy with HawgSports.com, and we'll catch you next time.